Hey, what's up? It's my Yang from Mix in the Dark. Welcome back to school to our scholars going to college, whether it be returning or starting. I remember my first year in college and how much I stressed over studying for exams and pulling all of those very unproductive all-nighters. And through all of the struggles, I met a lot of my really good and lifelong friends. It was definitely a fun time, and I do not regret any of the decisions that I made. So, good luck to our college students this year. Please stay safe and stay sane. Enjoy this Haunted University's Story Set 1. Story 1. I have a friend whom we will call Mary. Mary was in college. During her freshman year, she was placed into a dorm that was reportedly haunted. Mary was a pretty level-headed type of person, and she did not pay much heed to things like ghosts and goblins, so she just shrugged off the stories. One night, Mary needed to study for an exam. However, she was finding it hard to concentrate since her roommate was home. Her roommate liked to play her music at the highest volume setting. So even though she was wearing headphones, Mary could still hear the music blaring through. Mary needed a quiet place to study. She could go to the library, but being a petite girl and new to college, she wasn't comfortable walking across campus at night. Mary then remembered that the top floor of the dorm was empty. All of the rooms were being renovated and no one was living on the top floor during this particular semester. She had gone up there a couple of times to study before. Even though girls on her floor whispered that the top floor was haunted, Mary never noticed anything strange in the time she spent up there. So she gathered up her things and headed for the elevator. Mary went to the 14th floor and entered the lounge. The dorms were being worked on, but the floor lounge still had all of its lamps and furniture in place. The only difference was that this lounge didn't have a handful of giggling girls doing their nails and talking. Mary settled in and began her studies. Everything was nice and quiet as always. However, she noticed something strange. Every 15 minutes or so, the elevator would ding, then open. But no one came out. She ignored it. After some time, she realized that she needed a book that was in her room. So Mary popped up and headed for the elevator so she could retrieve her book. She went to her room, got her book, then came back to the 14th floor lounge. It was strange. Her chair had been moved. When she scooted back, the chair could not have gone that far, could it? The chair had slid backwards nearly 10 feet. Mary shook it off and thought maybe she shifted back harder and further than she thought. After a few minutes of studying, she cursed herself. She needed some class notes that were back in her room. So she entered the elevator again and returned to her room. She quickly found her notebook and went back to the 14th floor. When Mary entered the lounge, she dropped her notebook and screamed. Every chair in that lounge was stacked up in the middle of the room. It was impossible. No one was up there. But there it was right in front of her. The room had also grown much colder. Mary quickly grabbed her things and rushed back to her room. By now, her roommate had gone out, so she was alone. But her level-headed mind was too shaken to concentrate. Too scared to study, she called a friend and told him what happened. It was several hours before Mary's fear subsided and she could return to her studies. Story 2. I went to a private college in Minnesota for my undergrad, and most of the dorm buildings are pretty ancient. There's rumors about a dorm that was haunted. One of my friends, a Hmong female student, stayed there and she experienced a lot of strange events. She told us the first strange event that happened there was when she and her roommate first moved in. After settling in and unpacked, her roommate went off to have dinner. My friend was staying in her room with the door prompt open, and suddenly a little girl in a white dress just ran into her room and went straight into her closet. She thought it was strange, but also thought that the little girl was probably someone's sister or niece. Finally, after a few seconds, she went into the closet and asked the little girl to come out because her parents or big sister might be looking for her. My friend checked everywhere inside the closet and could not find her. The closet wasn't connected to any other rooms, so she thought it was strange. She even went out to the hallway and asked if anyone was missing a little girl. Weeks later, she told the story during a dorm meeting, and the dorm RA, or residence advisor, commented that supposedly this dorm was haunted. Some of the other ladies giggled about it, but not my friend, because she saw that little girl with her own eyes. Another thing that happened was that sometimes my friend's dresses would be on the floor when she walked back into her room. It looked like someone was trying it on and left them there on the floor. One time, it seemed like someone even tried to iron one of her dresses for her. She didn't think that her roommate could have done this to her. Her roommate was a very respectful person, and she would have never touched my friend's personal belongings. Well, needless to say, towards the end of the semester, other ladies in the dorm also started to tell their own stories of weird events that happened to them. Someone did some historical research and found out that at one time, a house was built by a very wealthy man on the very same spot as a dorm, and this wealthy man's spoiled little daughter died from an epidemic that hit the area in the early 1900s. My friend requested for a different dorm building the very next semester. Story 3. I went to an all-women's private college. If I tell you the state, you could probably figure it out, so I won't. Anyway, this was my freshman year and I lived on campus in a dorm. I was pretty cool with most of the girls on my floor, and eventually we became really great friends. We shared a love for creepy things, and it was getting close to Halloween, so we thought that it would be really cool to hang out for a weekend to do a bunch of cheap, creepy things. Thinking back now, it wasn't a list of exciting things, but at the moment, it was pretty fun for a bunch of underage and poor college freshmen. We decided to watch a scary movie and then take a walk in our school's wooded area at night. Our school's wooded area is rumored to be haunted. And that was when really weird stuff started to happen. There's a saying that you should never go out exploring with an odd number of people because a spirit will make an even number for your group and follow your group home. There were 5 of us, but we didn't believe in all that spirit following you home thing. We took our walk, and honestly, as spooky as we tried to make it, it was your average calm night walk. We joked the whole way about someone following us home and wondering who that spirit would eventually pair with. When we got back to the dorms, we picked a room and decided to all sleep in one room to tell scary stories for fun. It was a fire hazard to have all of us in one tiny dorm room, but we didn't care. The RAs would never find out if we all kept quiet. We all either laid down or sat up in our sleeping areas with the lights turned off. I was the furthest one away from the windows. The windows were bright enough to give off just enough light for me to see the silhouette of each person. One of my friends started to tell her personal scary story. As she was telling her story, For some reason, I felt I needed to count us. I started to count, making sure we were all there. I counted myself, 1, and then my friends, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 shadows. 6 shadows. I was confused. I flung myself over my bed area to the light switch, knocking over my friend's books. My friends froze and looked at me confused. I counted us in the light. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, I counted 6 heads earlier when the lights were off, I screamed. Some of the girls' faces dropped, their eyes widened, shocked but confused. My friend who lived in that dorm room tried to play it off as a joke, that I just couldn't do my math. My other friends laughed and dismissed my counting. Still flustered, I decided that it was probably just best to laugh it off. Maybe I was just thinking too much about a spirit making us even. I surprisingly slept okay that night. I think knowing that I had 4 other girls sleeping around me just made me feel safe. The next morning, one of my friends woke us up through a short shriek. I looked up to see what was going on. She explained that there was a male voice next to her telling her to wake up and to follow him. At this point, my friend had already hopped over to the other side of the room to where the dorm desks were. My friend who lived in that room stood up to try and comfort my friend by the desk. She stopped to grab her hand and asked, "Did you scratch the desk just now?" We all ran over and noticed deep scratch marks all over the top of the dorm desk. At this point, everyone was freaked out. We screamed and piled out into the hallway trying to figure out what was going on. We never did figure out what really happened, but maybe something did follow us home. Maybe our minds were playing tricks on us. Whatever it was, I was absolutely sure that I counted 6 heads.